A few months ago, I made a video about the War Within and how, for me personally, it's probably the last expansion I'll ever buy at launch, and likely the last one I'm going to buy at all if I'm being completely honest. The reason is pretty simple. Retail World of Warcraft has become something completely different from what it used to be. And it's those roots, the original spirit of Warcraft, that I fell in love with. So I just don't think retail WoW will ever hook me again because it simply isn't Warcraft anymore. That video actually did pretty well, and a lot of you got where I was coming from. The comment section was mostly supportive, but there were also a lot of people who were angry and rude about it. For them, the game is amazing, and they felt like I was just hating on it for no reason. Even though I mentioned multiple times that I don't think current World of Warcraft is bad, it just doesn't feel like Warcraft anymore. I also pointed out that the current player base really seems to enjoy it, and that the expansion has got great reviews, but it seems they just did not hear that part, despite being at the beginning of the video. So, this video is kind of a follow-up, not to repeat the argument that World of Warcraft has lost touch with its roots, I've already done that, but to explain why I don't think it will ever come back, and why that's not necessarily a bad thing. A few of the things I have mentioned before will pop up again, but anyway, let's just dive into it. It bears repeating that the War Within is not considered a bad expansion by most people who know something about it. And I get it, I don't consider the expansion bad either. On a technical level, it is solid. The dungeons are fun, delves are a cool new addition that they'll probably improve over time, raids are great as always, class design is solid, the story isn't complete trash anymore, and the zones and the music are absolutely beautiful. There haven't been any major disasters this time around, and delves are actually a big win for people who enjoy solo play. So yeah, the current player base is enjoying the War Within. And that's kind of where the issue lies, with the phrase current player base. Let me explain. There are MMOs like 4Story, Metin 2, Fiesta Online, you know the type, that still have a happy player base. Those players like the game because obviously they are still playing it. But I think most of us can agree that games like those aren't exactly examples of great MMO design. They run on niche groups, whales who throw money at them, and long-time players who stuck around because of nostalgia. We know that almost all of them are extremely pay to win and are on life support when it comes to actual content being put in the game. So when we talk about the state of an MMO, it's not just about the people who play it now. It's also about the people who used to play it but stopped, not because they were done with MMOs in general, but because the game itself changed direction in a way that they do not enjoy. It's also about the people who would play it if it felt different. Comparing the current WoW player base numbers to the number of people who once got pulled into the WoW craze but now won't even touch the game anymore tells a different story than just looking at the player base and how they feel right now. There is no doubt that the number of people who would give the game a try if it felt more like Warcraft, combined with those who left because it doesn't feel like Warcraft anymore, is way bigger than the number of people currently playing. And their frustration is just as valid as the enjoyment of current players. But like I said in my last video, that doesn't make it bad. Not in an objective way at least. So instead of repeating the reasons why WoW isn't what it used to be anymore, you can go watch that video if you want that, let's talk about why this shift isn't necessarily a bad thing, as much as I and many others hate it. First of all, like I've said a dozen of times already, the current player base likes this version of the game, and that gives it value. A game doesn't have to be true to its roots to be valid or enjoyable. World of Warcraft isn't dead and is not dying. Could it be bigger? Absolutely. But it's not in any kind of danger. The current player base is fairly healthy and it seems to really enjoy the game. So even if I don't personally like it anymore, that doesn't make it bad in an objective way. The fact that the game has changed doesn't make it bad, it just makes it different. And beyond that, I think the people that are making the game are happy with it as well. Most of the original devs from the Warcraft RTS era and the early World of Warcraft days are long gone. So it's not surprising that the vision behind the game has shifted. I've seen a bunch of interviews with current developers and they generally seem excited and passionate about what they're creating. Even people like Breach and Bellular, who have more behind the scenes insight, say that the dev team is in a better place now and actually believes in what they are building. And then there is the fact that from Blizzard's perspective as a company, this direction clearly works. As much as I hate it that World of Warcraft is a sub-based MMO stacked with every microtransaction under the sun, it is clearly making them money. It is profitable and that makes it sustainable. But it's not just the developers who changed, the player base did too. The people still playing retail today aren't the same ones who know life through Molten Core in 2005. Many are older now with less time, different expectations and different tastes. Blizzard isn't always chasing trends, they're adapting to the players who did stick around. In a weird way, World of Warcraft grew up alongside them, just not in the direction that I and probably many of you hoped for. So it's not just that the game changed, it's that the people it was made for changed too. WoW stopped feeling like a world and started feeling like a theme park. Everything's neat and compartmentalized. Dungeons over here, world quests over there, gear tokens on Isle 5. But the magic of old school World of Warcraft was in its messiness. It felt like a place, not a product. And that sucks for me, and maybe for you too, but it does make the game so much easier to digest for someone who played the game for the last 10 years and wants to know exactly what they have to do in their probably limited game time. So even when the changes are objectively bad in some ways, they still have upsides that might matter just as much to some people as the downsides matter to me. Personally, I think that the game lost a lot of its identity and integrity as an MMO. I hate that, I really do. But that doesn't mean the game is doomed or objectively bad. It just means it is no longer for me. And that's okay. Players are totally okay with downsides of microtransactions. They enjoy the new content and the vibe the game is going for. The developers seem to be proud of their work, and Blizzard is making a solid amount of money from it. If you're passionate about how the game used to be, it's hard to accept that. But honestly, there's not much proof that the game is in a bad place, at least not right now. I do think that long-term effects will be bad, but we're talking very long-term. So far off that for most people, it probably won't matter. But that's the topic for another video, one that I will try to make soon enough. So why am I so sure it will never change? Why do I feel like Retail World of Warcraft will never be for me again? Well, this is the 4th expansion in a row that didn't click. And based on what we know about Midnight and Blizzard's current direction, there's just no reason for me to think things will go back. And even if they absolutely wanted to do a 180 and return to their roots, I think it cannot be done anymore. To bring World of Warcraft back to what it used to be for players like me and millions of others who quit, it wouldn't just take new ideas moving forward, it would mean removing a ton of stuff that's already baked into the game. Take the vibe issue for example. I mentioned in the last video that the visual aesthetic of a game plays a huge role in how it feels overall. Even if the next expansion goes hard on that classic Warcraft fantasy, the kind of vibe we got from the RTS games and the early expansions, it doesn't change the fact that the game is loaded with years of visual bullshit. You can make the world feel more grounded again, but it won't stop 1/3 of your dungeon group from running around dressed like they are headed to a pool party or like they are plucked from a Cocomelon kids show. There's just too much random transmog, too many goofy mounts, pets, particle effects, stuff that has nothing to do with Warcraft's original tone. That visual consistency is gone, and there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube. Even if they tried to go back to an old school Warcraft aesthetic, the current player base probably wouldn't like it, and the people like me who left still wouldn't be fully satisfied because it would not work with all the existing assets. Like, demon hunters are out there dressing like clowns, literally, and death knights leave trails of flowers in their footsteps. The ship has sailed. You cannot go back because if you do, everybody will be dissatisfied. Current and lost player base alike. And of course, that goes far more than just cosmetics. That was just an example. The role of the players in the game's story, the story and its vibe in general, the characters, itemization and the gearing process, microtransactions and so much more. You cannot just go back at this point. The point is, this is what World of Warcraft is now.
And it's been like this
for nearly a decade. Sure, some things can be changed or improved. Maybe in a perfect world, for example, they could redo the leveling experience to make it actually meaningful. But even if that happened, and it won't, there's still so much baked in stuff that cannot be reversed. So yeah, the game has almost nothing to do with Warcraft anymore. And no, I don't think that is a bad thing. If this is the game the current devs want to make, and is finding an audience, then that's a success in its own right. That audience may be smaller than it used to be, and nowhere near the peak of WoW's potential, but it's big enough to keep the game alive, and not to be called small or dying. And that's something that a lot of people, myself included, struggle with when it comes to long-running live service games. We start to take the game changing as something personal, and I get it, but World of Warcraft has been around for 20 years at this point. It is impossible for it not to evolve and change quite dramatically. The people making it now aren't the same as the ones who started it. Some of the original ones aren't even alive anymore. And yeah, some changes are objectively bad, like the mess that was Shadowlands, where we can say that because things got so bad, there is no discussion about it being bad or not. But not every change is bad just because the sub count drops by a bit. Lower player numbers don't automatically mean failure if they do not go below certain thresholds. I know plenty of unpopular games, single player or otherwise, that are very underrated. And just because it's not what I want anymore, it doesn't mean it's wrong.